As we speak, ISIL is terrorizing the people of Syria and Iraq and engaging in unspeakable cruelty. The wanton murder of children, the enslavement and rape of women, threatening religious minorities with genocide, beheading hostages. ISIL-linked terrorists murdered Egyptians in the Sinai Peninsula, and their slaughter of Egyptian Christians in Libya has shocked the world. Beyond the region, we've seen deadly attacks in Ottawa, Sydney, Paris, and now Copenhagen. Elsewhere, Israelis have endured the tragedy of terrorism for decades. Pakistan's Taliban has mounted a long campaign of violence against the Pakistani people that now tragically includes the massacre of more than 100 school children and their teachers. From Somalia, al-Shabaab terrorists have launched attacks across East Africa. In Nigeria and neighboring countries, Boko Haram kills and kidnaps men, women, and children. We have to confront the warped ideologies espoused by terrorists like Al-Qaeda and ISIL, especially their attempt to use Islam to justify their violence. And all of us have a responsibility to refute the notion that groups like ISIL somehow represent Islam, because that is a falsehood that embraces the terrorist narrative.
Assalamu alaikum. Many other Americans have Muslims in their families or have lived in a Muslim majority country. I know because I am one of them. But my father came from a Kenyan family that includes generations of Muslims. As a boy, I spent several years in Indonesia and heard the call of the azan at the break of dawn. I have known Islam on 3 continents before coming to the region where it was first revealed. That experience guides my conviction.
You are absolutely right that John McCain has not talked about my Muslim faith.
As the Holy Quran tells us, the Holy Quran teaches that, the Holy Quran tells us, and the Holy Quran also says, we will convey our deep appreciation for the Islamic faith, which has done so much over the centuries to shape the world.
I would like to speak directly to the people and leaders of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Your great and celebrated culture. Over many centuries, your art, your music, literature, and innovation have made the world a better and more beautiful place. We know that you are a great civilization, and your accomplishments have earned the respect of the United States and the world.
I also know civilization's debt to Islam. It was Islam at places like Uluzar that carried the light of learning through so many centuries, paving the way for Europe's Renaissance and Enlightenment. It was innovation in Muslim communities that developed the order of algebra, our magnetic compass and tools of navigation, our mastery of pens and printing, our understanding of how disease spreads and how it can be healed. Islamic culture has given us majestic arches and soaring spires, timeless poetry and cherished music, elegant calligraphy, and places of peaceful contemplation. They have fought in our wars, they have served in our government, they have stood for civil rights, they have started businesses, they have taught at our universities, they've excelled in our sports arenas, they've won Nobel Prizes, built our tallest building, and lit the Olympic torch. And when the first Muslim American was recently elected to Congress, he took the oath to defend our Constitution using the same Holy Quran. In ancient times and in our times, Muslim communities have been at the forefront of innovation and education. Islam is not part of the problem in combating violent extremism. It is an important part of promoting peace. The enduring faith of over 1 billion people is so much bigger than the narrow hatred of a few. In the United States, rules on charitable giving have made it harder for Muslims to fulfill their religious obligation. That's why I'm committed to working with American Muslims to ensure that they can fulfill zakat. It is important for Western countries to avoid impeding Muslim citizens from practicing religion as they see fit. And I consider it part of my responsibility as President of the United States to fight against negative stereotypes of Islam wherever they appear.
We are no longer a Christian nation.
We do not consider ourselves a Christian nation.
The United States has been enriched by Muslim Americans. Since our founding, American Muslims have enriched the United States. Islam has always been a part of America's story. There is a mosque in every state in our union and over 1,200 mosques within our borders. I speak as clearly and as plainly as I can. America is not and never will be at war with Islam. Lisa is an example of the countless dedicated public servants across our government, a number of who are here today. First, we have to confront squarely and honestly the twisted ideologies that these terrorist groups use to incite people to violence. You know, leading up to this summit, there's been a fair amount of debate in the press and among pundits about the words we use to describe and frame this challenge. So I want to be very clear about how I see it. Al-Qaeda and ISIL and groups like it are desperate for legitimacy. They try to portray themselves as religious leaders, holy warriors in defense of Islam. That's why ISIL presumes to declare itself the Islamic State. And they propagate the notion that America, and the West generally, is at war with Islam. That's how they recruit. That's how they try to radicalize young people. We must never accept the premise that they put forward, because it is a lie. Nor should we grant these terrorists the religious legitimacy that they seek. They are not religious leaders, they're terrorists. And we are not at war with Islam. We are at war with people who have perverted Islam. Now, just as those of us outside Muslim communities need to reject the terrorist narrative that the West and Islam are in conflict, or modern life and Islam are in conflict, I also believe that Muslim communities have a responsibility as well. Al-Qaeda and ISIL do draw selectively from the Islamic texts. They do depend upon the misperception around the world that they speak in some fashion for people of the Muslim faith, that Islam is somehow inherently violent, that there is some sort of clash of civilizations. Of course, the terrorists do not speak for over 1 billion Muslims who reject their hateful ideology. They no more represent Islam than any madman who kills innocents in the name of God represents Christianity or Judaism or Buddhism or Hinduism. No religion is responsible for terrorism. People are responsible for violence and terrorism.
Judeo-Christian philosophy versus the jihad. That is the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. We received thousands of letters from clerics all over the USA after our discussion last night about the Holy War. And on this Ash Wednesday, it is appropriate to define the worldwide conflict between Muslim fanatics and nearly everybody else. As you may know, President Obama is a reluctant warrior, not willing to define the jihadist atrocities as anything other than criminal actions. The President does not even use the words Islamic terrorism for fear of offending good Muslims around the world. Now, some of you believe Mr. Obama is a Muslim sympathizer. Others on the far right even say he's an actual Muslim. There's absolutely no evidence to back that up. Today, the President issued a statement marking Ash Wednesday, quote, "Lent is a season of sacrifice and preparation, repentance and renewal. We remember those who are suffering, including those persecuted for their faith. We join millions in deepening our faith as we look toward the Easter celebration," unquote. In that statement, the President describes himself as a Christian. However, once again, the President does not say who is persecuting people for their faith. That would be the jihadists, primarily. It's important to understand that ISIS and al-Qaeda want a worldwide war against the USA and infidels in general. They want us to attack them on the ground. They believe such a military campaign would mobilize millions of other Muslims into the final worldwide confrontation they seek, the long-predicted ultimate holy war. That must be understood when developing a plan to defeat, not downgrade, defeat these Muslim killers. There's no question that critical mass has been reached. Here's what Reverend Franklin Graham said last night.
This is something that the White House doesn't understand, the religious aspect of this. And these men are doing what they are doing thinking they're pleasing God, because the Quran teaches this. Islam says you can have slaves. Islam says that you can cut the heads off of people, that you can kill Jews and Christians and Yazidis and anybody else that doesn't believe like you.
Now, with all due respect to Reverend Graham, most Muslims don't accept the fundamentalist view of the Quran, just as most Jews and Christians don't accept that slavery is permitted in the Old Testament. But an honest person has to know that millions of Muslims do accept Sharia law and the human rights violations that come along with it in the name of their God. They do accept jihad and the atrocities that go along with that. Those Muslims have to be dealt with when they start murdering men, women, and children, as they are doing now.
We are not at war with Islam. We are at war with people who have perverted Islam.
President Obama is flat out wrong in not describing the terrorist threat accurately. Muslim fanatics want to kill us, and there are millions of them. Period. In our Judeo-Christian nation, murder is the worst crime, taking a human life unacceptable and left in self-defense. But in some parts of the Muslim world, murder is justified if you're a non-believer or even...